I am Amanda Wilson, 32 years old, and never in my life did I imagine my own brother would stab me in the back. When Aaron and his wife Harriet fell on hard times, I welcomed them into my home with open arms. 5 years of rent-free living apparently wasn't enough for them. They repaid my kindness by secretly renovating my house for $200,000 and then demanding I foot the bill. The audacity still makes my blood boil. Before I tell you how this all unfolded, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to hear more stories about family members who mistake kindness for weakness. Growing up, Aaron and I were always close. Just 2 years apart. We navigated the trials of childhood and adolescence together, forming a bond one thought was unbreakable. Our parents raised us to believe family always comes first, a value I took to heart perhaps too seriously. When our parents decided to retire to Florida 5 years ago, I was in a position to buy our childhood home from them. At 32, my career as a real estate agent had flourished, and I had saved enough for a substantial down payment. The house was spacious. A beautiful 4-bedroom colonial in a quiet suburb with a large backyard where Aaron and I had spent countless summer days playing. This house belongs in the family, I told my parents when I made the offer. Too many memories to let it go to strangers. The transition to homeowner was smooth. I loved having my own space while preserving the warmth of my childhood home. I redecorated slightly, updated some appliances, but kept the fundamental character intact. Life was good, predictable, peaceful. Then came the call that would change everything. "Amanda, I hate to ask this," Aaron said, his voice strained over the phone. "But Harriet and I are in trouble." The economic downturn had hit them hard. Aaron lost his job at the marketing firm where he had worked for 7 years. Harriet, a dental hygienist, saw her hours cut dramatically as people postponed non-essential dental work. Within 3 months, they couldn't keep up with rent on their apartment. "We just need a place to stay for a few months," Aaron explained, "just until we get back on our feet." Without hesitation, I offered them the 2 spare bedrooms in my house. "Family helps family," I said, echoing our parents' mantra. The first weeks were harmonious, even pleasant. Aaron and Harriet arrived with gratitude overflowing. They insisted on cooking dinner most nights, with Harriet preparing elaborate meals as thanks for my hospitality. Aaron handled yard work and small repairs around the house. We would sit together in the evenings, sharing stories and laughter, almost like the extended family gatherings of our youth. "I don't know what we would have done without you, Amanda," Harriet said one night over a glass of wine. "You're literally saving us." I felt good about helping them. There was something fulfilling about providing a safety net for my brother, about being the stable one in the family for once. Aaron had always been the achiever growing up, the one with better grades and more athletic ability. Now I could show my own success by supporting him through this rough patch. But small signs of entitlement began emerging around month 3. Harriet started rearranging kitchen cabinets without asking. Aaron invited friends over without giving me a heads up. Small requests became assumptions, then demands. "We need to upgrade the Wi-Fi package," Aaron announced one day. "The current speed doesn't support both of us working from home." I agreed, even though it meant an extra $50 monthly. After all, they were actively job hunting and good internet was essential. As month 4 rolled into month 5, the few months timeline began to stretch. Aaron had a promising interview, but didn't get the job. Harriet picked up more hours, but not enough for them to afford their own place. Each setback came with a reasonable explanation for why they needed to stay longer. "The rental market is insane right now," Aaron explained at the 6-month mark. "Everything in our budget is either in dangerous neighborhoods or complete dumps." I nodded understanding, pushing down my growing discomfort. The arrangement was supposed to be temporary, but I couldn't bring myself to press the issue when they were still struggling financially. "Family helps family," I reminded myself. By the end of the first year, Aaron had found contract work that paid less than his previous job but provided some income. Harriet was working nearly full-time again. Still, there was no mention of moving out. Our parents called occasionally from Florida, asking how we were all getting along. "Everything's great," I told them, not wanting to worry them or make Aaron look bad. "We're making it work." But beneath the surface, tensions were building. My space no longer felt entirely my own. I found myself retreating to my bedroom more often, the only place that remained fully mine. Still, I ignored these red flags, telling myself that my discomfort was a small price to pay to help my brother through a crisis. Little did I know this was just the beginning of a 5-year nightmare that would test the limits of my patience, my finances, and ultimately my family bonds. As Aaron and Harriet crossed the threshold into their second year living in my home, the subtle shift in dynamics became impossible to ignore. What had begun as a temporary arrangement had silently morphed into a permanent living situation without any formal discussion. Aaron stopped mentioning apartment hunting altogether. When I casually brought up a nice rental complex being built nearby, he quickly changed the subject. "This arrangement is working so well for everyone," Harriet said when I pressed the issue over dinner one night. Why rock the boat? The problem was, it wasn't working well for me anymore. My brother and his wife had gradually claimed more and more territory in my home. The guest room became their bedroom. The second spare room transformed into their office. The basement recreation area became their entertainment space. Even the garden shed was now Aaron's workshop. I first noticed the physical changes to my home when I returned from a weekend conference to find the guest bathroom completely repainted from the soothing sage green the first had chosen to a bold teal that Harriet preferred. "We thought we'd freshen it up for you," Harriet explained with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The old color was looking dated. I swallowed my objection. It was just paint, after all. But the unauthorized renovations didn't stop there. New light fixtures appeared in the hallway. The living room furniture was rearranged. The kitchen cabinets I had meticulously organized were completely redone according to Harriet's system. "Don't you think it flows better this way?" she asked when I stood bewildered in my own kitchen. Unable to find my coffee mugs. Their financial contributions to the household also dwindled. Initially, they had offered to cover utilities and groceries while staying with me. By the middle of year 2, I was paying for everything except their personal expenses. When I brought this up to Aaron, he seemed genuinely surprised. "We've been tight lately with saving for our future," he said. "I figured since you own the house outright, it's not costing you anything extra to have us here." I did not, in fact, own the house outright. I had a mortgage, property taxes, and insurance to pay. But Aaron had conveniently forgotten these details. The small renovations continued without proper consultation. One Tuesday, I came home to find a contractor installing ceiling fans in the living room and master bedroom. "Surprise!" Harriet exclaimed. "Now we can save on air conditioning this summer." I tried to have a gentle conversation about boundaries that evening. "I appreciate the thought behind the fans," I began carefully. "But I need to be consulted before changes are made to the house." Harriet's face immediately fell into a hurt expression. "I was just trying to help improve your home," she said. "We live here too, you know." Aaron, who had once been my closest ally, now consistently sided with his wife. "Amanda, you're being a bit controlling," he said. "Harriet has an eye for these things. You should be thanking her." That night, I lay awake wondering how expressing basic boundaries in my own home had somehow made me the villain. The guilt was overwhelming. Was I being selfish? Was I failing the family-first principle our parents had instilled in us? The situation deteriorated further when Aaron and Harriet began regularly inviting their friends over for dinner parties and game nights without checking if I had plans. I would arrive home from a long day of showing houses to find my kitchen taken over by Harriet and her friends preparing elaborate meals, my dining room set for 8 or 10 people. "Join us," they would call, as though they were the hosts and I the unexpected guest. One evening, I overheard Harriet's friend Jacqueline ask, "So how long have you owned this place?" "Oh, it's Amanda's house technically," Harriet replied, "but we've been making it livable. You should have seen it before we started updating things." The comment stung. I had been proud of the improvements I'd made to my childhood home. Hearing Harriet dismiss my efforts while taking credit for making it livable felt like a slap in the face. The first serious confrontation came when I discovered they had replaced the dishwasher without telling me. The new model was sleeker but significantly more expensive than what I would have chosen. "I can't keep finding out about changes to my home after they've already happened," I said firmly. "Your home." Aaron's voice took on an edge I'd never heard him use with me before. "We've been living here for almost 2 years. When are you going to start thinking of it as our home? When you start paying rent or contributing to the mortgage?" I replied before I could stop myself. The hurt look on Aaron's face made me immediately regret my words. "Wow," he said quietly. "I never thought my own sister would throw money in my face like that. After everything we've been through as a family." He walked away, and Harriet gave me a look of profound disappointment. "He's your brother, Amanda. Family is supposed to support each other unconditionally." That word, unconditionally, haunted me. Was there supposed to be no limit to what family members could ask of each other? No boundaries that deserved respect? Rather than continue the conflict, I retreated. I began spending more time at the real estate office, volunteering for weekend open houses, anything to avoid the tension at home. Meanwhile, Aaron and Harriet became increasingly comfortable making decisions about my property without consultation. The boundaries I had tried to establish were not just ignored, but actively trampled. I was becoming a stranger in my own home, and the worst part was that raising any objection made me feel like the unreasonable one. The manipulation was so subtle that I constantly questioned my own reactions. Was I really being selfish? Was my discomfort just pettiness? The questions circled in my mind as the changes to my home and to my life continued unabated. By the third year of our temporary arrangement, I had developed a routine that minimized my time at home. I left for the office before Aaron and Harriet woke up and often returned after they had gone to bed. Weekends were filled with open houses and client meetings, many of which I volunteered for just to have a legitimate reason to be away. My home had become a place I avoided rather than a sanctuary I returned to. The few times I did spend extended periods at the house, I discovered more changes. The living room now featured an expensive smart TV and sound system that Aaron had purchased for the family. The backyard, once a simple lawn with a few flower beds, now boasted an elaborate stone patio with built-in seating that Harriet had commissioned from a landscaper friend at a discount. "Isn't it gorgeous?" Harriet beamed as she showed me the transformation. "Now we can finally entertain properly in the summer." The word grated on my nerves. There was no we when it came to ownership of the house or payment of the bills, but there was certainly a we when it came to making decisions about renovations or claiming credit for improvements. The most alarming discovery came when I noticed the master bathroom had new fixtures. The simple shower head had been replaced with a rainfall system. The basic sink faucet was now a designer model with touch activation. Even the toilet had been upgraded to a model with heating and bidet functions. How much did all this cost? I asked Aaron when I found him in the kitchen. He shrugged nonchalantly. "Harriet got deals through her connections." "Don't worry about it." "I am worried about it," I pressed. "These are expensive changes to my home that I never approved." Aaron's expression hardened. "There you go again with my home." "We've been living here for years, Amanda. When are you going to stop being so territorial? We're improving the property value, you know." The financial strain was becoming increasingly difficult to manage. My utilities had doubled with 3 adults in the house, not to mention the wear and tear on appliances and furniture. Aaron occasionally contributed to groceries, but Harriet had expensive tastes, filling the cart with organic produce and specialty items I would never have purchased for myself. I began noticing strange women coming to the house during the day when I happened to work from home. One afternoon, I walked in on Harriet and a stylishly dressed woman named Stephanie poring over fabric swatches in my living room. "Amanda, this is Stephanie," Harriet introduced casually. "She's an interior designer helping me reimagine the downstairs flow." "Reimagine the flow?" I echoed, baffled. "This house has so much potential," Stephanie said enthusiastically. "Harriet has wonderful vision for updating the dated aspects." "I didn't realize my house needed updating," I said stiffly. Harriet laughed lightly. "Amanda's very attached to the original features. Sentimental value and all that. But we're helping her see how some modernization would really transform the space." I was speechless. Not only was Harriet planning more unauthorized changes, but she was positioning herself as the decision-maker to an outside professional, with me cast as the resistant, sentimental homeowner who needed to be managed. After Stephanie left, I confronted Harriet directly. "I can't afford major renovations right now, and I don't want them anyway. This has to stop." "Don't be so uptight, Amanda," Harriet replied dismissively. "We're not asking you to pay for anything. Aaron and I have it handled." But they didn't have it handled. I started finding bills from home improvement stores addressed to Aaron piling up. Late payment notices appeared. I suspected they were stretching themselves financially for these unwanted improvements while still not contributing to the actual household expenses. My best friend Jennifer became increasingly concerned about the situation. Over lunch one day, she didn't mince words. "Amanda, they're taking advantage of you," she said bluntly. "They've been living rent-free for 3 years, making changes to your house without permission, and making you feel bad when you object. That's not normal." "They're family," I said weakly, the justification sounding hollow even to my own ears. "Family doesn't treat family like an ATM with a free housing attachment," Jennifer retorted. "Have they even mentioned plans to move out?" They hadn't. In fact, when I overheard Aaron on the phone discussing a job opportunity in another city, he told the caller, "No, relocation isn't possible right now. We're settled here." Settled. The word echoed in my mind. They had settled into my home with no intention of leaving. By year 4, Aaron's financial situation had improved significantly. He had secured a full-time position at a local marketing agency, making a salary comparable to what he earned before. Harriet was now working at a high-end dental practice catering to wealthy clients. Yet there was no mention of moving out, no acknowledgement that their temporary situation had extended far beyond reasonable limits. Instead, they seemed to be digging in deeper. I came home one day to find mail addressed to Aaron and Harriet Wilson at my address. They had started using my last name on some documents, creating the impression that they were co-owners of the property. The stress began affecting my work performance. I missed appointments, forgot details during client meetings, and lost a major listing because I was distracted during the pitch. My broker pulled me aside after a particularly disastrous open house where I had forgotten the lockbox code. "Whatever's going on in your personal life, Amanda, you need to get it under control," she warned. "This isn't like you." I finally sought help from a therapist, Dr. Patricia, who specialized in family dynamics. In her quiet office, I unloaded the entire situation, tears streaming down my face as I described how trapped I felt in my own home. "It sounds like you're experiencing a significant boundary violation," Dr. Patricia observed. "Why do you think you've allowed it to continue for so long?" The question hit me hard. Why had I? Fear of conflict, certainly. The deeply ingrained belief that family obligations trumped personal needs. Guilt about my relative financial success compared to Aaron's struggles. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, Dr. Patricia told me. It's necessary for healthy relationships. Your brother and his wife have grown accustomed to taking without asking. That pattern won't change unless you change your response to it. I left that session with homework to draft a clear statement of boundaries regarding my home. But before I could implement this plan, events took a dramatic turn that would push me beyond my breaking point. The real estate market heats up every spring, and last April was particularly busy. When a lucrative opportunity arose to represent several corporate clients looking for properties in a neighboring state, I jumped at the chance. The 2-week business trip would not only advance my career, but give me a much-needed break from the tension at home. "I'll be gone for 14 days, I told Aaron and Harriet over dinner. "The house is yours, just please don't make any changes while I'm gone." They nodded agreeably, with Harriet adding, "Don't worry about a thing. We'll take care of everything." Those words would come back to haunt me in ways I couldn't have imagined. The business trip was successful beyond my expectations. I secured 3 major contracts and received a substantial commission. For the first time in months, I felt like my old self, confident and in control. That feeling evaporated the moment I pulled into my driveway. A large dumpster sat in front of my house, overflowing with debris. A contractor's truck was parked in my spot. The front lawn was littered with construction materials and tools. My heart pounding, I rushed inside to find my home unrecognizable. The wall between the kitchen and dining room had been completely removed. The kitchen itself was gutted, with exposed wiring and plumbing where cabinets had once stood. The hardwood floors I had lovingly refinished were covered in dust and debris. Upstairs, my master bathroom was stripped to the studs, the fixtures piled unceremoniously in the hallway. I stood in shock, unable to process the destruction around me. Then I heard Harriet's voice from the backyard, speaking excitedly to someone about the extension we're planning for Phase 2. When I stepped onto the back porch, Harriet was reviewing blueprints with a man in a hard hat. She looked up, momentarily startled to see me before breaking into a wide smile. "Amanda, you're back early." "Surprise," she exclaimed, as if the demolition of my home was a gift rather than a violation. "What have you done?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. "We're finally bringing this place into the 21st century," Harriet explained enthusiastically. "Open concept downstairs, spa bathroom upstairs. And we're talking about a sunroom addition next month. Wait until you see the plans for the kitchen. Italian marble countertops, custom cabinets, smart appliances throughout." The contractor looked confused. "You must be the homeowner," he said, extending his hand. "Your brother assured me you were fully on board with the renovation plans. We've been working double shifts to get the major demolition done before you returned." "I never approved any of this," I said, my shock giving way to anger. "Who authorized this work?" The man looked uncomfortable, pulling out a contract from his folder. "I have the signed approvals right here. Mr. Wilson handled everything." The signature at the bottom of the page looked like mine, but I had never seen this document before in my life. Aaron had forged my signature. When I confronted him that evening, his reaction was disturbing in its casualness. "We knew you'd be resistant to such major changes, but trust me, you'll thank us when you see the finished product. The property value will increase by at least 30%. "I don't care about the property value," I shouted, finally losing the composure I had maintained for years. "This is my home, not an investment property. You had no right." Aaron's expression darkened. "We've been living here for 5 years, Amanda. We have some rights too. Not to tear down walls and gut rooms without permission," I countered. "How are you even paying for all this?" That's when the full extent of the betrayal came to light. Harriet proudly explained they had secured a home improvement loan for $200,000. The loan officer had been a friend of hers who expedited the approval process. "The best part is, we qualified for a great interest rate based on the equity in the house," she explained. "What equity?" "This is my house. My mortgage," I said, confused and increasingly alarmed. Aaron had the audacity to look annoyed. "We used the house as collateral, obviously. But don't worry, the payments are structured over 15 years, very manageable." "Manageable for whom?" I demanded. The room fell silent for a moment before Harriet said, "Well, for you, of course." I thought I had misheard. "For me, obviously," Harriet replied, as if explaining something to a child. It's your house. These improvements add value to your asset. Naturally, you'll be handling the loan payments. The entitlement was breathtaking. Not only had they destroyed my home without permission and forged my signature on legal documents, but they expected me to pay for the privilege. That's insane, I stated flatly. I never agreed to any loan or renovation. I'm not paying a cent. Aaron's face reddened. We've been living here rent-free for years, saving you from loneliness, helping maintain the property. And this is how you repay us? By refusing to invest in improvements that benefit everyone. Benefit everyone? I was incredulous. You've turned my home into a construction zone without my consent and expect me to pay $200,000 for the privilege. Harriet's expression turned cold. We thought you'd be grateful. These renovations will finally bring this outdated house into the modern era. But I guess some people just can't appreciate vision. Some people can't appreciate boundaries, I retorted. You're being incredibly stingy, Amanda, Harriet snapped. After everything we've done for you. Done for me. I was nearly speechless. Yes. Done for you, Aaron jumped in. You were living alone in this big house, barely using most of the rooms. We brought life back into this place. We've been your built-in house sitters, maintenance crew, and renovation consultants. Most people would be thanking us. I looked at my brother, truly seeing him for the first time in years. This wasn't the Aaron I grew up with. This was someone who had been consumed by entitlement and his wife's materialistic aspirations. Get out, I said quietly. Excuse me. Harriet's eyes widened. Get out of my house. Now. My voice was steady, surprising even myself. Don't be dramatic, Amanda, Aaron scoffed. Where would we go? And what about the renovations? They're already underway. That's not my problem. I replied. You created this mess without my consent. You can figure it out. Harriet laughed incredulously. You can't just throw us out. We've been living here for 5 years. We have tenant rights. Actually, you don't, I countered, though I wasn't entirely sure of the legal standing. You've never paid rent. There's no lease. Your guests who have overstayed their welcome by about 4.5 years. The argument escalated, with Aaron and Harriet alternating between guilt trips, gaslighting, and outright threats. By the end of the night, I was emotionally exhausted but resolute. I locked myself in my bedroom, one of the few spaces still intact, and broke down in tears. My home was in shambles. My relationship with my brother destroyed, and I was potentially facing financial ruin if the loan documents proved binding. But through the tears, I felt something else. Determination. For too long, I had allowed my boundaries to be violated in the name of family obligation. That ended now. The morning after discovering the unauthorized renovations, I awoke with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. Instead of confronting Aaron and Harriet again, which would only lead to more manipulation and gaslighting, I needed a strategic approach. This wasn't just about reclaiming my house anymore. It was about reclaiming my life. My first call was to Jennifer, who had been warning me about this situation for years. I need a place to stay for a few days while I figure things out, I explained. My guest house is yours for as long as you need it, she replied without hesitation. And Amanda? I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. My second call was to Catherine Lopez, a friend from college who had become a successful attorney specializing in property law. I explained the situation, including the forged signatures and unauthorized loan. This is serious, Amanda, Catherine said gravely. Forgery is a criminal offense. And if they took out a loan using your property as collateral without your consent, that's fraud. Don't confront them again until we've documented everything and understood your legal position. I packed enough clothes for a week and essential documents, then left while Aaron and Harriet were out meeting with the contractor. From the safety of Jennifer's guest house, I began implementing Catherine's advice. Document everything. I created a detailed timeline of the 5 years Aaron and Harriet had lived with me, noting when boundary violations began and how they escalated. I gathered photographs of my home before the renovations and asked the neighbors if they had any pictures of the construction dumpster and work vehicles, establishing when the unauthorized work began. Catherine arranged for a forensic handwriting analyst to examine the forged signatures on the renovation contracts and loan documents. "We need to prove definitively that you didn't sign these papers," she explained. She also helped me understand the legal concept of adverse possession, which Harriet had likely been banking on. In some states, if someone lives on a property openly for a certain number of years, they can claim legal rights to it. However, there are strict criteria, including that they must be living there adversely to the owner's interests, not as invited guests. Your brother and his wife were explicitly invited to stay, which undermines any adverse possession claim. Next, I contacted the contractors directly, explaining that I was the legal homeowner and had never authorized the work. The lead contractor, Michael, was horrified to learn he had been misled. "Mr. Wilson presented himself as co-owner of the property," he explained. "He said you were traveling but had approved all the plans before leaving. We would never have begun work without proper authorization." Michael agreed to provide copies of all communications with Aaron and Harriet, as well as the original plans they had commissioned. The scope of their ambition was staggering. Beyond the current demolition, they had planned a complete remodel of every room in the house, a 2-story addition on the back, and landscaping changes that would have doubled the already exorbitant cost. While gathering evidence, I discovered something that confirmed my worst suspicions. Among Harriet's papers left carelessly on the dining room table was a draft email to a real estate attorney inquiring about establishing sweat equity in a property shared with a family member. They were trying to claim partial ownership, Catherine confirmed when I shared this finding. The renovations weren't just about creating their dream home with your money. They were laying groundwork to argue they had invested significantly in the property and therefore deserved a legal stake in it. The betrayal cut deeper than I had imagined. This wasn't just entitlement. It was a calculated plan to essentially steal a portion of my home out from under me. During this investigation period, I stayed away from the house, communicating with Aaron only through brief text messages stating I needed space to process the situation. Meanwhile, I was building a case and preparing for the confrontation to come. A key part of my strategy involved reaching out to our parents in Florida. I had been protecting Aaron for years, never telling them the full extent of the situation. Now I needed their support. But I was afraid they might take his side based on incomplete information. I arranged a video call and told them everything, starting from the initial few months offer and detailing the escalating violations culminating in the unauthorized renovations. I showed them photos of the current state of the house. "We had no idea," my mother said, clearly shaken. "Aaron told us you two were happily sharing the house as co-owners, that it was your idea for them to stay permanently. He said you were partnering on renovations to increase the property value," my father added. "We thought you were both investing in the family home together." Their shock confirmed what I had suspected. Aaron had been spinning a completely different narrative to our parents. I was relieved when they expressed full support for my position. "This is not how we raised him," my father said firmly. "Family is important, but so is respect for others' property and boundaries." With my support system in place, I consulted with a property appraiser to document the damage to my home and estimate restoration costs. The news wasn't good. Beyond the $200,000 loan, an additional $50,000 would be needed to reverse the unsound structural changes they had made and restore the original features they had destroyed. As painful as these discoveries were, each one strengthened my resolve. I was no longer the uncertain, guilt-ridden sister who could be manipulated with family obligation rhetoric. I was a homeowner defending my property rights and a woman reclaiming her personal boundaries. Catherine helped me prepare formal eviction documents, though she cautioned that the process might be complicated given the length of time Aaron and Harriet had lived in the home. even without a formal rental agreement. They could argue they were month-to-month tenants, she explained. But their actions, particularly the forgery and unauthorized renovations, give us strong grounds for immediate eviction based on property damage and illegal activity. The final piece of preparation was emotional. Dr. Patricia helped me prepare for the manipulation tactics Aaron and Harriet would likely employ: guilt, family obligation, gaslighting, and possibly even threats. Remember, setting boundaries isn't selfish, she reminded me. It's necessary for your well-being. You have the right to decide who lives in your home and what changes are made to it. After a week of intensive preparation, I was ready to take back control of my life and my home. I scheduled a formal meeting with Aaron and Harriet, with Catherine present as my legal representative. The stage was set for a confrontation 5 years in the making. The meeting was set for Saturday morning at Catherine's office. I chose a neutral location to avoid the emotional triggers of being in my damaged home and to establish a professional tone for what would be a difficult conversation. Catherine had arranged for a notary to be present, signaling the serious legal nature of the discussion. Aaron and Harriet arrived 15 minutes late, a power move I recognized from Harriet's playbook. She had dressed formally, as though attending a business negotiation, while Aaron looked uncomfortable in a blazer that seemed slightly too small. Their body language spoke volumes, Harriet confident and dismissive, Aaron anxious, but trying to project solidarity with his wife. "Thank you for coming," Catherine began coolly. "Amanda has asked me to represent her interests in this matter." "We didn't realize this was a legal proceeding," Harriet replied with an artificial laugh. "We're family discussing a family matter. I'm not sure why attorneys need to be involved. Forgery and loan fraud extend beyond family matters," Catherine stated flatly, setting a folder of documents on the table. "They're criminal offenses." Aaron's face paled visibly. This clearly wasn't the conversation he had been expecting. Catherine methodically presented the evidence we had gathered. The forged signatures verified by a handwriting expert, the contractor's statement confirming Aaron had misrepresented himself as a co-owner, the unauthorized loan documents, and photos documenting the extensive damage to my property. Based on these findings, Catherine continued, Amanda has 2 options. She can pursue criminal charges for the forgery and fraud, or you can agree to her terms for resolving the situation without legal prosecution. The shock on their faces was palpable. For 5 years, they had operated under the assumption that family ties would protect them from consequences. The introduction of potential criminal charges shattered that illusion instantly. "This is ridiculous," Harriet sputtered. "We were improving the property. The renovations will increase the value significantly. Amanda should be thanking us." "Improving a property without the owner's consent is still destruction of property under the law," Catherine countered. "Regardless of your intentions." I had remained silent until this point, letting Catherine handle the legal aspects. Now I spoke directly to my brother, whose eyes couldn't quite meet mine. "Aaron, I welcomed you into my home because you needed help. I never placed conditions on that help. I never asked for rent or utilities or even grocery money after the first few months. All I asked was to be consulted about changes to my home, a boundary you and Harriet repeatedly violated. We thought you'd be pleased once you saw the finished results," Aaron mumbled. "That's not your decision to make," I replied firmly. "This isn't about the renovations themselves. It's about respect for my home and my right to decide what happens to it." Harriet attempted to regain control of the narrative. "We've invested 5 years of our lives in that house. We have sweat equity." "Sweat equity requires the owner's agreement," Catherine interjected. "You can't unilaterally decide to acquire an ownership interest in someone else's property through unauthorized modifications." I slid a document across the table. "These are my terms. You have 30 days to vacate my property. You will contact the loan company and explain that the documents were forged, removing my name and my property from any obligation. You will pay for the restoration of the unauthorized construction to its original condition. Aaron finally looked up, his expression a mixture of disbelief and dawning recognition of the seriousness of their situation. 30 days? Where are we supposed to go? That's not Amanda's concern, Catherine stated. You've had 5 years to plan your next steps. We'll fight this, Harriet declared, though her voice lacked conviction. We have rights as tenants. You were never tenants, I corrected her. You were guests who violated my trust. But if you prefer to approach this as a landlord-tenant dispute rather than a family matter, Catherine has prepared the formal eviction documents as well. Catherine produced another folder. We can proceed with the eviction filing today. However, given the evidence of forgery and fraud, I strongly advise against forcing this into the court system. The implied threat was clear. If they chose to fight the eviction, we would pursue the criminal charges. Harriet looked to Aaron for support, but something had shifted in my brother's demeanor. The facade of entitlement was cracking, revealing the uncertainty beneath. Could we have a moment alone? Aaron asked. Catherine and I stepped out of the conference room, leaving them to discuss their limited options. They'll take the deal, Catherine predicted. The evidence is too strong, and the alternative is potentially facing criminal charges. When we returned 10 minutes later, the atmosphere in the room had changed dramatically. Harriet sat rigidly in her chair, arms crossed, while Aaron looked defeated. We'll move out within 30 days, he said quietly. And I'll contact the loan company about the paperwork. And the restoration costs? Catherine pressed. We can't afford that, Harriet snapped. We've put everything we had into those renovations. Then Amanda will pursue full restitution through the courts, Catherine replied, along with the criminal charges. The negotiation continued for another hour, eventually reaching a compromise. Aaron and Harriet would move out within 30 days, remove their names from the fraudulent loan, and make monthly payments toward the restoration costs. It wasn't ideal, but it allowed me to begin reclaiming my home without the prolonged stress of a court battle. As we prepared to leave, I had arranged one final element to reinforce my position. My parents joined the meeting via video call, their faces appearing on Catherine's laptop. Aaron, we're deeply disappointed, my father said, his voice heavy with emotion. This is not how we raised you to treat family. Aaron had clearly been counting on our parents to take his side or at least remain neutral. Seeing them firmly supporting me visibly deflated his last hope of leveraging family dynamics in his favor. I'm sorry, he mumbled, though whether to me or our parents wasn't clear. Harriet, realizing she had lost every angle of attack, resorted to one final outburst before storming out. This house was never good enough anyway. You'll regret not letting us complete the renovations when you're stuck with an outdated property no one wants. Aaron followed her silently, shoulders slumped in defeat. In the weeks that followed, I supervised their moving process carefully, with Catherine's advice to document everything. They took only their personal belongings, leaving behind the half-finished renovations and the chaos they had created. On their final day, Aaron approached me alone while Harriet waited in their packed car. I know it doesn't fix anything, he said hesitantly, but I am sorry, Amanda. I got caught up in Harriet's vision and lost sight of whose home this really was. I nodded, not yet ready to offer forgiveness, but acknowledging his apology. I hope you find a place where you can create the home you want, Aaron. One that's actually yours. As they drove away, I stood on the porch of my damaged but reclaimed home, feeling a complex mixture of grief for the relationship lost and profound relief that the ordeal was finally ending. The house was a mess, the renovations a disaster, but for the first time in 5 years, I was the uncontested mistress of my own domain. Standing alone in my half-demolished kitchen the day after Aaron and Harriet left, I experienced a storm of emotions. Relief that they were finally gone, battled with grief over the relationship with my brother that might never recover. Pride in finally standing up for myself mixed with anxiety about the enormous task of restoring my home. For several minutes, I simply stood there, allowing myself to feel everything without judgment. The physical reconstruction of my house became a metaphor for my emotional recovery. Both would take time, patience, and a willingness to rebuild from the foundation up. The financial aftermath was daunting. Although Aaron had contacted the loan company to remove my name from the fraudulent documents, the damage to my home remained. The contractors had been paid only partially, leaving me with both unfinished renovations and angry workers who felt misled. Catherine helped negotiate payment plans and settlements, but the process drained my savings and required me to take out a legitimate home improvement loan to cover the restoration costs. Think of it as an investment in your peace of mind, Jennifer said when I fretted about the expense. You're not just fixing walls and floors. You're reclaiming your space. She was right. Each repaired room felt like a victory, a tangible symbol of my reclaimed autonomy. I made conscious choices about the restoration, keeping some changes that actually improved the functionality of the space, while reversing others that had destroyed the character of my childhood home. Michael, the lead contractor who had been unwittingly drawn into Aaron and Harriet's scheme, felt personally responsible for not verifying the authorization more thoroughly. He offered a significant discount on the restoration work and connected me with reputable subcontractors who understood the situation. We'll make it right, he promised. Better than before. The reconstruction took 6 months, during which I temporarily moved in with Jennifer to avoid living in a construction zone. Her guest house became my sanctuary, a peaceful space where I could process the upheaval of the past 5 years and plan for a future defined by healthy boundaries. My weekly sessions with Dr. Patricia continued, focusing now on rebuilding my sense of self after years of accommodation and self-denial. The pattern began long before Aaron and Harriet moved in, she observed during one session. You've always been the family peacekeeper, the one who adjusts to maintain harmony. She was right. Even as children, I had been the one to compromise when Aaron and I disagreed. Our parents had unconsciously reinforced this dynamic, praising me for being reasonable and unselfish, while allowing Aaron's more demanding behavior to set the family agenda. Setting boundaries isn't just about saying no to others, Dr. Patricia explained. It's about saying yes to yourself, to your own needs and values. This perspective transformed how I approached relationships. I began practicing small boundary assertions with friends and colleagues, finding my voice in situations where I would previously have acquiesced to avoid conflict. To my surprise, most people respected these boundaries once I clearly established them. The experience with Aaron and Harriet had damaged but not destroyed my belief in family. Our parents continued to be supportive, though they maintained relationships with both of us, a balance I respected even when it was difficult. They manipulated us too, my mother admitted during one of our weekly calls. Aaron told us such different stories about the living arrangement. We should have asked you directly. 3 months after moving out, Aaron reached out via email. He and Harriet had separated, a development that surprised me less than it might have before witnessing their dynamic up close. I've been doing a lot of thinking, he wrote, about how I let myself become someone I never thought I'd be. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know I'm working on myself. I responded cautiously, agreeing to meet for coffee at a neutral location. The brother who sat across from me seemed both familiar and like a stranger. Humbled by the consequences of his actions, but showing glimmers of the Aaron I had grown up with. Harriet had such grand visions, he explained, of the house, of our life together. Somehow her disappointments became my responsibility to fix, and your house became the canvas for her dreams. It wasn't an excuse, just an explanation. The road to rebuilding our relationship would be long, with careful boundaries and measured trust. We agreed to monthly lunch meetings, keeping conversation light at first, gradually working toward the deeper issues that had driven us apart. Harriet, unsurprisingly, made no attempt to contact me. Through mutual acquaintances, I heard she had moved to another state and was dating a wealthy property developer. I wished her well from a distance, grateful that our paths would likely never cross again. As my home's restoration neared completion, I invited the friends who had supported me through the ordeal for a reclaiming dinner. Jennifer, Catherine, Dr. Patricia, and several colleagues who had covered for me during my most distracted periods gathered in my rebuilt dining room. To boundaries, Catherine toasted, raising her glass, and to the courage to enforce them. The celebration marked a transition point. The crisis was over, but its lessons would continue to shape my life in profound ways. Perhaps the most unexpected outcome was finding purpose in helping others who had experienced similar boundary violations. Through Catherine, I connected with a support group for people dealing with family financial exploitation. Sharing my story helped others recognize patterns of manipulation in their own relationships and find the courage to address them. You're not just a victim of this experience, Dr. Patricia noted in one of our final sessions. You've become a guide for others navigating similar challenges. The transformation of my home paralleled my internal growth. The finished restoration honored the house's original character while incorporating thoughtful updates that reflected my taste and needs. It became truly mine in a way it hadn't been before. A physical manifestation of my reclaimed identity. 6 months after the renovation's completion, I invited Aaron to see the restored house. It was a significant step in our cautious reconciliation, allowing him to witness the consequences of his actions while demonstrating that healing was possible. It looks like the home we grew up in, he said quietly as we stood in the living room. But better somehow. More authentically you. His observation captured exactly what I had aimed for, not just in the house, but in my life. Authenticity based on self-knowledge and firm boundaries. The journey from doormat to self-advocate hadn't been easy or linear. There were still days when guilt crept in, when the ingrained habit of putting others' needs before my own reasserted itself. But those moments became less frequent and less powerful as I practiced maintaining the boundaries that protected my well-being. The true test of forgiveness isn't forgetting, my father said during one of our conversations about Aaron. It's remembering and still choosing compassion, but with wisdom that prevents the same harm from happening again. That balance of compassion and protective wisdom became my guiding principle in rebuilding a limited relationship with my brother, in forming new friendships, and in honoring my own needs without apology. Standing in my restored kitchen on the 1-year anniversary of Aaron and Harriet's departure, I felt a sense of peace that had been absent for so long. The house was quiet, but it was a peaceful quiet rather than the tense silence of unspoken resentments. Every room reflected conscious choices about how I wanted to live, uncompromised by others' demands or expectations. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who took advantage of your generosity? How did you find the courage to stand up for yourself? Share your experiences in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if the story resonated with you. Remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do for both yourself and others is to establish clear boundaries. Thank you for listening, and may you find the strength to create the life you truly deserve.